Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 127 of Brew Talk with Mr. Beer. My name is Robert. I will be your host. Once again, for today's show, as always, we appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in and watch our videos. Hopefully you are enjoying them and learning something. If you want to reference our videos in like a written format, so you rather just go read it instead of listen to it, you can find those on our blog page, mrbeer.com/blog, or just go to mrbeer.com, click on the little blog button there, and you'll be all good to go. So let's dive into today's topic. What I have here is a post from Ashley that she wrote up a while ago, so I thought it'd be a good video to kind of turn into and get into some video content for you guys. But it is how to make non-alcoholic beer. Yes, that is a real thing. It's become quite popular. I'm not personally a huge fan. I've tried some. There's some good ones out there, but it's yeah, I mean, people are enjoying it. It's becoming popular in the market, so I thought it'd be a good thing to talk about. And you can make it with Mr.Beer actually easier than you think. So one thing you may not know is that most non-alcoholic beers start out as regular beers containing alcohol. So that means, like I mentioned earlier, Mr.Beer refill can be churned into a non-alcoholic beer. Alcohol is a lot more volatile than other liquids, so because of that, it's a slow, kind of long heating process to remove that alcohol from the fermented beer. So you got to make sure you got some time set aside if you're going to do this bad boy here. So the next thing you need to know is that making a good quality non-alcoholic beer is that all malt beers are typically better than like adjunct heavy beers. So if you got a beer you brewed with like a lot of dextrose or booster, or you had sugar, brown sugar, or anything like that, those flavors typically don't convert well into a non-alcoholic beer. So you want to use an all malt beer. So if you're brewing, for example, with Mr.Beer, use a deluxe refill, a craft refill. Use 2 cans if you want. You just want it to be a heavy malt base. You can add hops, obviously, but just avoid adding like boosters, brown sugars, and stuff like that. We're after flavor, not alcohol production here. So you're gonna make sure all the flavors in there. Doesn't really matter how high of an octane of a beer, because you're gonna boil that off anyways. You should make sure you're getting good flavors from the malts and the hops if you choose to use them. And speaking of flavor, water quality is very important with non-alcoholic beers. Alcohol, fermented beer and alcohol will cover up off flavors and can cover up bad water. So you want to make sure you're using chemical-free water, no chlorine in your water at all. That will help your non-alcoholic beer taste better and come out better. So make sure if you're going to brew a non-alcoholic beer, I would definitely get some bottled water for that bad boy. So now, how to actually make it is quite simple. So you'll ferment your beer like you normally would. You'll brew up a batch, you let it ferment until it's done fermenting. That whole process does not change from sanitizing your beer to when it's actually done. Once it's done is when you'll start the process of converting it into non-alcoholic beer. So to remove the alcohol, what you will need is obviously a large clean pot that can fit the entire volume of your beer. So your entire 2-gallon batch in your LBK needs to be able to go into your pot. You need to have a source to heat it on, long and slow. So usually like a stove or some type of burner works pretty well for this. What you want to do is you want to transfer the beer from your fermenter into your pot. The best way to do this is to use a tube. So I just get like a bottling tube, hook it up to the bottom of your spigot, run that into your pot, and you want to be very gentle when you do this. Try not to have it splash up or do any stuff like that. So once you get it into your pot, you'll need a thermometer. So you're going to put your thermometer in the beer, and then you will begin gently heating the beer. You can stir it if you want with a sanitized spoon, just to make sure it's heating evenly throughout. But just be careful not to agitate the beer. You don't want to disturb it in this delicate state. Now, while you're heating your beer, you need to watch your temperature very slowly. You do not want your beer to exceed 175 degrees Fahrenheit. It should stay right around 170, 173. And you will maintain this temperature, allowing the alcohol to evaporate for about 20 to 30 minutes or so. It kind of depends. To kind of determine if you're done, you can cool a sample and give it a try. Or you can use a hydrometer as well, just to see if it reads at 0, then your alcohol's gone. But I think a taste tester is always good to have. You can taste it before and then taste it after, and you'll be able to tell if you got non-alcoholic beer. Temperature is key though with making this. If you get too high to 175 or over, you can get some nasty off flavors that will turn your non-alcoholic beer into non-drinkable, non-alcoholic beer, which is just it's not fun for anybody. So once you have evaporated all the beer, so you did your boil, not all the beer, all the alcohol, you want to keep your beer. So once you evaporated all the alcohol, you'll need to cool that solution. So you can either use a wort chiller, you can put it in like your sink in an ice bath, but you really want to prevent agitation on the beer, so you can just leave it to cool is fine. If you just want to leave it on your stovetop, don't cover it because I'll get condensation will drop down into it, which will dilute your beer. So just let it cool to about room temp, and then from there you can bottle it, which is really easy. So basically, once your beer is cooled, it's gonna just taste like really flat and not a whole lot going on, but there's no alcohol in there. So once your beer is cool, what you'll do is you'll bottle this, and you'll bottle it the same way you normally bottle beer. So you're gonna either add your carb drops or your sugar, fill up your bottles, but you're actually, no, misspoke. So once your beer is, once you boiled your beer, there's no more active yeast cells in there. So when you go to bottle your beer, you will not have enough yeast in there to create CO2 in your beer, so it won't be carbonated. So you will need to add yeast into your bottle at the same time you're adding your priming sugar. So make sure you have an extra packet of yeast lying around. Whatever yeast you use to ferment your beer is the yeast you're going to want to use to add to your bottles. So if you use the regular gold packet underneath the lid of the can, use that. If you use SO5 or WBO6 or whatever, then you want to have that on hand to do that. So when you go to bottle your beer, what you're going to need is you are going to want to take whatever yeast you use, make sure you have a clean plate. You're going to dump the yeast on that clean plate. Then when you go to get your bottle, you're going to grab your bottle, add your priming sugar or your carbonation drops, and you're going to take your finger, touch it on the plate, and then slowly sprinkle that into your bottle, and those little bit of yeast cells will be enough to create that CO2 in there. Then you'll fill it up with beer, cap it, and repeat that for the rest of the bottles. So yeah, that's it. So then from there you're going to follow the same process. Let it carbonate. Once it's firm, throw it in the fridge and give it a try. It is one thing to note is that even though it's non-alcoholic beer, even in the store, non-alcoholic beer usually contains about 0.5% alcohol in it, and that's because they're naturally carbonated, not forced carbonated. So your beer is going to have about half a percentage, maybe a little less, of alcohol in it. So that's just something that I wanted to note in case those are sensitive to it or just don't want any alcohol. It's hard to do, but using this process is what will make non-alcoholic beer taste just like regular beer. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Non-alcoholic beer is not as complicated to brew as you think it would be. If you want to reference this again, like I said, you can find the written format on our blog page, mrbeer.com/blog. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like or a comment. We really appreciate it. Share it wherever you can. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. We're at Mr. Beer on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can join our Facebook group, Mr. Beer's Brewing Society. Just find that by searching Mr. Beer's Brewing Society on Facebook. Answer the 3 questions and we will let you in. And that is going to wrap it up for this week's episode. And I will talk to you guys next week. Cheers. Cheers.